Hello and welcome to Alan History Nerd. In this video I'm looking at A-level politics, and in particular I'm looking at the advanced information for the summer 22 for the A-level politics paper, and in this particular video I'm going to look at the advanced materials for component 1. This is what the exam board, in this case Edexcel, have said that you need to know going into that paper. I'm going to look at what we can take from that, how that might affect our revision and preparation for doing the exam and doing the different questions. I'll be doing further videos for this series, looking at component 2 and component 3. And also I will be creating a playlist which has got the relevant videos for the different bits where I've done the content previously for this part of the specification. So first of all, what will the paper look like? Well, you, as ever, will have the 3 parts of the paper. So in the first part you'll have a choice of 2 source questions, and these could be from any of the indicated parts of the sections 1 to 4 of the spec, and we'll look at what sections have been highlighted out of those sections. And part B, again, it's 2 questions, this time essays, again 30 marks, and you choose one of those 2, and again it could be from any of the indicated parts of sections 1 to 4 of the spec. And then the final part, part C of the paper, will be the ideology questions, and you'll choose between socialism or conservatism. So we know liberalism isn't there. So that's the first part of something we can go, oh, right, we have a bit of a better idea in terms of what's going to be on the exam paper. Now, how much does this advanced information that we've been given helped? Well, in the totality of parts A and B of the paper, there will be 4 questions. There have been 8 bullet points of the specification identified. Some, possibly all of the questions, will relate therefore to more than one bullet point. The way that the bullet points are connected together, there is a logical way which we'll go through how it might be, but we can't absolutely guarantee that is the way. And the logical way is, well, there are 4 sections in the spec referred to in the advanced information. Now, the big question really is, are these the basis of the question? So we've got, from the first section, we've got pressure groups and rights. From the second, we've got political parties, both major and emerging, and the debates on it. Then from the third, we've got electoral systems. And from the fourth, we've got quite a small part of the fourth, which is influence of the media on UK politics. So does that tell us that's the basis of our 4 questions? Well, it would seem logical. It's not absolutely guaranteed, but that would seem logical. There are, in some of those, there's 2 bullet points. In one, there's 1. In a couple, there's 3. So there is a basis there for us to maybe draw some kind of assumptions. However, it might be that a bullet point from one section is actually connected to a bullet point from another, and it might be that they ask the questions in a slightly different way. So from component 1, section 1 of the spec, we've got pressure groups and other influences, and we've got rights in context. Now, one of the things I've put on here are the URLs to the videos that I've done covering these bits, which I would suggest will be helpful for your revision. So in terms of what the spec says, we've got how do different pressure groups exert influence and how their methods and influence vary in contemporary politics. Case studies of 2 different pressure groups highlighting how their methods and influence vary, and other collective organisations, including think tanks, lobbyists, corporations, and their influence on government and parliament. Then it also has in, from section 1, 1.4, rights in context, and this talks about the major milestones in development, including Magna Carta, more recent developments such as the Human Rights Act and the Equality Act. And then it talks about the debates and the extent, limits and tension of the UK rights culture, including consideration of how individuals and collective rights may conflict, contribution of civil liberties, pressure groups, including the work of 2 contemporary civil liberties pressure groups. Right. Now that bit could be absolutely key in terms of our understanding of where we're going with this. So why put both of those bits on the pre-release material and say, well, these are things you need to know? Well, if you're combining the 2 of them, that bit at the end looks like the most likely route of the question, because you need to know about pressure groups and their methods and and all that kind of stuff. And then if you then had a question that was a contribution to civil liberties of pressure groups, and make sure you use the examples you've learned in relation to civil liberties and not just general pressure groups that you might have used from the early one, you might well get a question in that kind of area. So the combination of 1.3 and 1.4 would suggest something like the question on screen at the moment. So this links the 1.3 about pressure groups with 1.4 about rights. So evaluate the view the actions of pressure groups have been more significant than government legislation in defending and promoting rights in the UK. You must consider this view and the alternative view in a balanced way. So with that, we've combined the two bits. So logically, if you are focusing your revision, your preparation for the exam on pressure groups, I would think about how you can connect it to rights. So if you are looking up and doing your building of examples and information about pressure groups, I would maybe pick at least a couple of pressure groups in there to do some detail on that are ones that have worked on developing and protecting rights in the UK. You would of course revise everything in the pressure groups bit and everything bit in the rights bit, because who knows exactly what they're going to ask. But something like that question, which has been asked before, is something that would combine the two, and therefore logically explain why they put 1.3 and 1.4 on the paper. If there's no relation to rights in it at all, and it's just a pressure group question, why would 1.4 be on there? If it was just a rights question and it had no relation to pressure groups, why would pressure groups be on there at all, unless they've been combined with something from one of the other sections? So in section 2 of the spec, they've picked actually 3 bullet points of that. So we have got established political parties, emerging and minor UK political parties, and political parties in context. Now, that last one, I think, is the real biggie in there, because that gives us kind of a lot of the debate stuff that comes out of this part of the spec. So the first 2 bits tell you that you are going to need to know in detail about the 3 major parties. Obviously, the 2 major parties plus the Lib Dems, which it's questionable whether they are a major party or not, but they are according to the specification. And there's videos that I've done on all 3 of those, which will be helpful. And hopefully, as you've been going through your course, you've been building up loads and loads of examples of stuff that's going on in those parties. You also need to know about the emerging parties. So in particular, think about UKIP and the Brexit Party over recent years. Think about the Greens, and then the real big one where you should be able to get loads of stuff and loads of examples is the growth of the SNP and that the impact that's had. So I would pick the SNP plus one other out of those to make sure you've got plenty of detail on that, and then make sure you can nail down any debate related to these 2 bits in 2.4. Development of multi-party system, so practice essays and arguments and debates and things about whether the UK has a multi-party system or not. Think about the decline of the Liberals, the growth of the SNP, all these different bits. Think about the comparative success of the major 2 parties. So why have political parties succeeded or failed? Think about influences of the media. Now that one might be important, because although logically you would think in one way 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4, put them all together, we can fit all of that in, but we've got a bit there about influence of the media. Now influence of the media is also in section 4, so that might be we have some kind of connection between parties and media, and that again is something to make sure that you build into your revision, and it might be a really important important topic. It might be something that's related directly to one of the exam questions. So as I said, why 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4? Well, what that suggests is probably if the question is directly asking about section 2, then it will bring in elements of all of them. So this is an example from the 2019 paper. Evaluate the view that only political parties that matter in our political system are Labour and the Conservative parties. You must consider the view and alternatives to this view in a balanced way. Well, that then says, well, you need to know about the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, so that's the stuff out of 2.2. You need to know about emerging parties as a counter, so as you say, well, no, it's not only them that matter. The UKIP mattered because they led to the Brexit referendum, and the SNP matter because they're now the 3rd biggest party in Parliament, and the Greens matter because of the raising of green issues and the issue of climate change and the shifting policies of the other parties in relation to making sure that they're in step. So You could then bring all that in. That could be part of your counter argument. And then you've got all this stuff about multi-party or factors affecting party success. So if you prepped the does the UK have a multi-party system essay, then a lot of that knowledge and examples and detail that you could have built into that are stuff that you could use on this, because you can, again, this is a different way of looking at that essay. Is it just the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, or is it all the others? And you could look at all the stuff on election results and kind of go look at the percentage, overall percentage that the two major parties are holding between them, and you could talk about how there was a shift back to that and all that kind of stuff. So there's loads and loads of data you could use from recent elections that would help you get into that, and all the stuff about potential government, and then you could go back and use all the stuff about coalition and minority governments and things that we've had over fairly recent years. So all of that is really good stuff. So that is a lovely question, and no reason to believe that they would do that one exactly like that again, but something like that is a way that you could combine those different bits. But remember, there is that bit in 2.4 which relates to media, so maybe that will relate to the stuff later on. So in section 3 of the spec, in component 1, we've got one of my favourite topics, which is electoral systems. And so in that, we have got the stuff on the different electoral systems, 3.1, so first past the post, additional member system, single transferable vote, supplementary vote. There are obviously other electoral systems, but they are the ones that are on the spec. You need to know the advantages and disadvantages of these, so make sure you're revising that. Build yourself nice tables, or however you want to do your revision notes, flashcards, however you do it, and make sure you have got advantage and disadvantage of each of those different systems. And you could talk about how the first past the post used in general elections compares to the electoral systems used in Scotland and Wales and in Northern Ireland. And it's really important that you have detailed examples from those to show how the system has worked. And also, if you look at models and things, and lots of these have been produced to show how using the different electoral systems would have affected recent elections. Make sure also you've got things like turnout and things like that, just to make sure you've got some nice solid data, some nice solid examples that are going to really make your answers stand out. So either that, if it's a source question, or if it's an essay. And the second one in there is then 3.3, which is the electoral system analysis. So the different electoral systems, the electoral system analysis obviously fits together very nicely. So debates on why different electoral systems are used in the UK, the impact of the electoral system on the government, or the type of government you get, so whether you get coalition governments or minority governments or clear majorities, the impacts on different systems on party representation, and of electoral systems on voter choice. So this again would suggest that maybe some kind of assessment of the different electoral systems used in Britain, about which one's best suited, about whether first past the post is still the option that should be chosen. Again, remember, you've got all that stuff about that this has been put to the UK population through a referendum, and again, turnout was very low, but the result was fairly overwhelming. So that's another bit that you could build in there. So is first past the post past its use by date, something along those lines is something that might fit up on this. How effective have the electoral systems been in Scotland and Wales? Could be a different way of looking at it. So all of that, again, you can learn the stuff for 3.1. That's just and advantage and disadvantage, and then it's getting into the debate stuff, which is more likely to be the actual focus of the question, which is the stuff in 3.3. So why are they used, the impact that they have, and make sure you split that impact into type of government, party representation, and voter choice. A really good question with then again 3 sections about essentially, is this system the best system? And in that you can go, well, in terms of the type of government, it creates this is the positives, this is the negative. In terms of party representation, this is the positives, these are the negatives. In terms of electoral, in terms of voter choice, this is positive, this is negative, and balance it against different systems. So there should be lots of good stuff in that. You could build a really good answer either to a source or an essay question on. Section 4 of the spec picks out only this one bit, which is the influence of the media. So all that other stuff on voting behaviour is just not in there, which for some of you may be a relief, and those who are a bit data driven like myself, who love loads and loads of statistics about voting behaviour, might be slightly sad about. So the part they picked out is assessment of the role and impact of media on politics, both during and between general elections, including the importance and relevance of opinion polls, media bias, and persuasion. So opinion polls, really good basis of any question. So that might be one to make sure, right, how effective are opinion polls? Are they misleading? Do they alter election results? Something like this. Make sure you've looked into all that in detail. Stuff on media bias and persuasion, there's been lots of stuff in that. So we've seen the Labour Party under Corbyn came out after 2017 and 2019, and in both occasions said that they believed that essentially they suffered or they lost because of the media was biased against them. Koonsberg at the BBC, again, there was accusations against her. We've seen this big furore of the Conservative Party accusing Channel 4 of being against them, and then we've seen the stuff now that's happening with the potential privatisation of Channel 4 by the Conservative Party. And you will have done lots of stuff, I'm sure, in class where you've gone through the different newspapers and how they relate to the different political parties and how they support them, and examples from the past. Claims that from the Sun that it's won elections in the past. It does all that ring true. And then, of course, they're really pushing the real important stuff in the modern day is all the stuff, the use of social media and things like that. Now, it might be just by itself. It could be an opinion poll question or a media bias question, or it might be combined with stuff to do with political parties, as we saw from earlier on. So that might be a different way in which they combine the questions. So lots of interesting stuff in there. Again, just like with all the different bits you'll see on the screen, there's the links to the videos, and there'll be this playlist about the advanced information, and it will have those different videos all set out in it. So hopefully that's something that can help you with that. Now, with the ideologies, we know that it will either be the conservatism or it will be socialism. But with both, you'll get to choose. Now, with all of this, one of the things that I would say, I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. So just like with the earlier bit, they have reduced the amount you have to revise. I would revise everything they tell you to revise, and I would revise it very thoroughly. They've knocked out one of the ideologies. Well, that's lovely, but I would still revise both, because there's no guarantee on what the question will be like. So you might kind of go, I'm going to put my eggs in the conservatism basket, or I'm going to put my eggs in the socialism basket. You then get an absolutely stinker of a question. You look at the other one and go, that looks lovely, but I didn't revise it. So I would make sure you revise both. They have already reduced the amount you need to revise. For each of the ideologies, you need to know core ideas and principles, different views and tensions within them, and the key thinkers. The key thinkers is really, really important. I would recommend you always try and use 3 key thinkers, and you are giving detailed examples of their views on the different bits. Now, with this, there are different ways in which it can all be divided up. Look at the spec in detail to make sure you're covering all the different bits. What I've done in terms of the videos is I've looked at the basics. I've then looked at the key areas that the spec picks out: human nature, society, economy, and state. So you could get an individual question about that. You could get a question that relates to the different types directly, but even if it does or doesn't relate to different types directly, you must make sure you can refer to and talk to the different types. So in terms of conservatism, that's traditional conservatism, one nation conservatism, and the new right. I am still perplexed by the choice of the thinkers for the new right, because they are both neoliberals and aren't really neoconservatives. And there's more of an argument for Rand, I think, with some of her political, with her supporting of Goldwater in the 60s. But anyway, that's a bit by the by. So you need to make sure that you use key thinkers really effectively in your essay. So as well as in a key thinkers video, I've done another video on using key thinkers in essays. And it could be a more general question about whether conservatism is a pragmatism rather than an ideology. It could be to do with the extent to which the new right differ with other conservatives. it is likely, though not guaranteed, that it will relate to one of those key elements, either human nature, society, economy, or the state, or it might be about how divided or united conservatives are on generally or on a particular issue. The pragmatism versus ideology one is always a well-trodden kind of track in terms of conservatism as well. In terms of socialism, it's similar again. So your core ideas and principles, differing views and tensions within socialism. Socialist thinkers and their ideas. Again, make sure you go to the specification and you look at all the bit on there. In particular, I think this is important for all the ideologies, but it's probably particularly important for socialism that you go through all the key terms, and in the specification there are the key terms, and there's a glossary. I think it's Appendix 2 on the specification, and that will have a glossary of all the key terms, all the key words you need to know and how they define them, and that can all prove to be really important. Just like with the conservatism one, I've done videos on the basics: human nature, society, economy, and the state, the different types, and the key thinkers, and an extra video on using the key thinkers in essays. So there's lots and lots of stuff in there. Make sure you can write on each one of those 4 key topics. Make sure that you know in and out the degree of difference in between the different types of socialism. Think about how they all relate to capitalism, how they relate to workers' control of the economy, how they relate to their views on society and human nature. There's always the great one with the socialism one, where you've got the third way in Giddens at one end, where you kind of, and there's a whole debate about whether that is actually socialism at all. And so that's maybe something that you might need to get into with it. So the contrast between the different views is probably more extreme in socialism than it is in any of the other ideologies. So that's something to definitely be mindful of. But again, hopefully all those videos will help you prep all the stuff that you need, but also make sure you go back to the spec and look at that in detail in terms of what it's telling you about the key ideas and things that you need to know about. Right. So I hope that's been helpful to you. Again, I will get this video up, and I will also when this up, I will also put the playlist together, which has got all the videos which I'll link to in it. So I'll have a playlist for the advanced information on A-level politics component 1 for Excel, and I will put that up, and with all the links to all those different videos, so this can help as part of your revision to build towards that exam. And hopefully this has given you a bit more of an insight into what some of that advanced information means, has pinpointed the stuff that you do need to go away and revise, and again linked you to content videos. Also to remind you, on my main A-level politics playlist, then there are videos going through the techniques for the different parts of the question paper. So how to do source questions, how to do essays, 30-mark essays, how to do ideology essays. So there's bits on that, and there's also videos on the 3 AOs. So AO1, which is about knowledge, AO2, which is analysis, particularly comparative analysis, and AO3, which is about judgment and what those mean and how to write about those effectively to get top marks. So I hope all that has been helpful to you. If it has been, then please hit like or maybe leave me a comment. If you haven't subscribed already, then please do. There's loads of content on the channel for A-level politics, and also, again, for A-level history with various different units with coverage on here as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has proven helpful to you all.